Hello and welcome to Frank Fridays. My name is Karline Moeller and I'm the founder of Art Frankly. You all know my co-host Ellie, and today we are chatting with Camille, who runs Camille Obering Fine Art in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We're excited to have Camille here. So Ellie, over to you to get this interview started.
Hi, Camille. I'm really excited to chat with you for Frank Fridays today.
Hi, Ellie. Good to be here. Thank you.
Of course. So Camille, I think it's really exciting. We're going to be chatting. You have kind of an unconventional story and are certainly giving us kind of a peek, if you will, into a different market. But maybe we can start the conversation by taking it to the very beginning. What was it about the art world that initially drew you in? Maybe you can give us a little synopsis of your career to date.
Sounds good. My parents were collectors, so I grew up around art, and then my father's first wife, when they divorced, she moved to New York to become an artist, and her name is Mary Obering. And so she and her daughter, my half sister, were in Soho in the 80s and 90s, and Mary was colleagues with Donald Judd and Sol LeWitt and all of those great artists. So I just always had it around my world. And as I kind of came of age, I found that I was very interested in how art could teach you about history and give you different perspectives, and you could really learn a lot about the world and about different people's lives and experiences through art. And that's really what made me pursue it. I was very passionate and curious about that. So after I graduated, I moved to Spain for a little bit, and then was in New York. And first I worked at a small art magazine called Zing Magazine, and then moved to the Whitney Museum, where I worked in development, and then was at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, and then a small organization called RX Art run by Diane Brown. And actually, my sister Amanda and Mary told me, if you have the opportunity to work with Diane, you really should, because she's very knowledgeable, and I really enjoyed my time with her. So that's how I kind of got started.
Amazing. I love that. Well, you certainly have, you were steeped in the art world, both kind of personally and professionally. Camille, obviously now you're based in Jackson Hole, but before we kind of speak a little bit more about that chapter, what were some of the things that you gleaned from your time in New York and working in the art world that you feel have served you best in your career?
Well, I grew up in Jackson Hole. So I grew up in a small town in a resort community where the focus was really about the outdoors. And New York was, I loved it. It was so stimulating and so interesting. It was just like a huge playground for me in terms of learning and curiosity. And it was fundamental to the success and to where I am right now in terms of kind of merging these two worlds together. I learned how to hustle in New York.
Yeah. It'll teach you that for sure.
Yeah. I learned, how to conduct myself in a professional manner with a lot of different kinds of people. And I think, in terms of the art world, I really learned how the art ecosystem works. And the contacts and relationships that I made in New York were fundamental to me being able to really pursue the vision that I have out in Jackson Hole. So it was very important. And I really cherish that time that I was there.
Yeah, that's great. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, at what point did you decide to start either matriculating back west, or was it kind of an abrupt, just tell us about that decision and what some of the opportunities were that you saw?
Yeah, well, I started to see more and more people coming to Jackson Hole. It was starting to become a more cosmopolitan sort of town. And I could see that there was starting to be interest from people who would be interested in collecting possibly modern contemporary art. And traditionally, this town had a lot of Western and landscape collectors, and you saw a lot of log homes, and, they were trying to fit into this kind of, cowboy Western theme. But as I was watching how Jackson Hole was evolving, I started to see that maybe there was an opportunity there to bring more modern contemporary art to the Valley. And unlike Aspen, who had a very, very sort of robust contemporary art collecting community, Jackson Hole did not have that. But I thought that posed an opportunity for me. So that's kind of how I decided to come back here. I started to think about it in 2007, and then in 2008, when things were crumbling, I decided, okay, I'm going to make my move. And that's when I did move out here. And it actually served me quite well, because my first show that I curated was for a gallery in town, and I wanted to start with artists that were big names, but I thought communicated ideas that people would be interested in here. So I did a show with Helen Frankenthaler, Milton Avery, Richard D. McCorn, and Joan Mitchell. And the way this came together was that I went back to all of my contacts in New York and said, there's an opportunity in Jackson Hole. I think there's the intellectual curiosity and the wealth, basically, to start supporting a contemporary art market, modern contemporary art market out there. And I think you've overlooked it. And because the market had crashed, these galleries and dealers were willing to consign to me, because I had the relationship and I was presenting them with a compelling case. And so they did. And then I sold. And once I started making sales out of that first show, that just, that proved my thesis, essentially. So I was able to continue on my road.
Yeah, I love that. It is always interesting too, how in these moments, I think these like inflection points in society, whether it was 2008, and I think we're seeing it with last year, with the pandemic as well, that while there is, kind of an unfortunate raising of the field in some ways, in other ways, I think there's a lot of opportunity for different entrepreneurial thought, and people are willing to kind of, reinvent the wheel, if you will.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's really exciting. Well, I'm sorry to have missed that show in 2008, but it sounds like it was a great kind of foundation that you've laid for yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, in addition, Camille, I know you do private advisory, and, as with many kind of professionals in the art world, we wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things. But I think one of the things that I found to be most rewarding was visiting the Guesthouse when I was recently in Jackson Hole. So maybe we can direct attention a bit to the Guesthouse. Can you tell us just a little bit about the curatorial program at this beautiful annex that you've outfitted, and how your vision for some of the multidisciplinary programs and events has come to fruition?
Yes. Well, the Guesthouse was really born out of both need and a desire to pursue this idea that I had. And as I mentioned, I was curating shows around Jackson Hole, and I had started to develop a following. People were very interested in what I was doing, and but I didn't have a permanent space. And so I was always working with another person's space or their schedule, and I couldn't work ahead. So when I looked into doing a space downtown, it was going to be very expensive. And I assessed how a lot of the other galleries were surviving in Jackson Hole. And from my vantage point, I felt I would have to compromise my programming that was very interesting and inspirational to me and what I like about the arts, to survive in a place like Jackson. And so I really wanted to liberate myself from that. So my husband and I had started, my husband's a musician. So we had started to bring artists out to Jackson Hole to work with us on projects. And we realized that they loved having their time out here. It was very inspirational. It was a completely different kind of experience. And that we could provide them with that experience here. And also being outside of kind of the larger art world, we could experiment with things, they could experiment with things. And so that was the impetus to build the guest house, was to be able to have a space on our property that we could control the programming, and where we would invite artists and musicians and filmmakers to come and show their work here. And I think we felt, as we were moving along in our careers, that we really wanted to build a sense of community, and we didn't feel that we had the community that maybe a lot of our peers had, who had been were in cities pursuing their creative jobs. And so we said, okay, well, we can build the community here by bringing people into Jackson Hole, and working with them on projects here, and that's what we've done. And it's been very very rewarding. Everything we had hoped the guest house could be, it's becoming, maybe even more quickly than we thought. So it's very exciting. It's very exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, as an outsider looking in, and someone who had the opportunity, I've only visited once, but you can feel the kind of the upswell, and certainly there's, I think, some great kind of community driven energy around it. So I think you should be very proud.
Thank you. Thank you. The other thing is, as I was going along, I would go to art fairs and, the cities many times a year to stay connected with people and see what was happening. And I realized that the kind of art experience I like to have is when it's intimate, oftentimes, a very personal sort of connection with the art. A lot of times it'll be in an unusual place where you're not expecting to see something really moving. And I think that a lot of people feel that way, that if they actually go somewhere with intention because they've heard it's interesting or it's beautiful or whatever is driving them, then the payoff in terms of the experience for them is big, is large. And I felt like we could do that here with the guest house. So
no, I think I do. I can't speak for kind of generations past, but I think certainly in what we're seeing in the past few years is this level of intentionality. And I think it's the return to kind of a slower approach, at least from a kind of a thoughtful connoisseurship standpoint.
Right.
So I think you guys have kind of put your thumb on the pulse when it comes to that as well.
Thank you.
Camille, what has been the most rewarding part of the guest house for you personally?
I guess just seeing that an idea that I had, see it to actually come to fruition, because when you talk to people about your ideas, sometimes they don't get it, and you don't get the reward of their validation in the process of building it. But now that it's built and we're executing everything that we dreamed and hoped we could, and people are responding in such a positive way, like yourself and many others, it's very validating and very rewarding. So that's wonderful. That's really that's great.
I love that. Well, I certainly think you guys should be very proud. So it is exciting. Yeah. So Camille, we like to kind of round out these conversations with some conversations centered a little bit more around professional practice. So the next few questions, I think, as we kind of near our conclusion, are just keeping in mind, if you will, the next generation of either art professional or art connoisseur. So I'm curious, in your opinion, are you seeing kind of the art world evolve to embrace new models? And if so, what opportunities are you seeing for kind of the next generation of professional?
It's definitely evolving. And I think things are constantly evolving and changing, and you need to be aware of that and be open to it. That's my philosophy. And then I think you just, if you understand sort of the history and where you think things are going, then you can see where you fit into that.
Yeah.
And what do I have that I can contribute to this ecosystem that, you know, distinguishes me from somebody else? And I just think that if you can be aware of the past, but also be open to the future and critically be thinking about where you fit into the picture, and be willing to be flexible and move and evolve, then I think that's, you know, I think that's the best you can do, right? That and hard work.
Yes, I think that's actually probably the essence of all. What do they say? You know, luck is always hard work and good timing, or something
exactly.
Exactly. What is one thing that you do every day that helps you sustain your business or brings you closer to success?
Well, I exercise every day. And
by the way, I share that with you. I do think that brings us closer to success.
It took me a while to really realize that how important exercise was, not just for my physical health, but for my mental health. And it really, some of my best ideas and best thinking comes when I am exercising, and it gives you a little space from the actual activity, but gives you space in your own head to think things out. So that's one thing I do. I try to be in contact with someone that I think can help further what I'm trying to do here, whether that's a collector, a potential new collector, you know, an artist, you know, galleries, anybody, just somebody, you know, maybe it's not daily, but it's consistent. And I really to try and maintain those, maintain relationships and develop relationships, basically. So I'm reading a lot and just kind of reading what's going on. I use Instagram a lot, actually, to see what people are looking at, what's happening, you know, what people are interested in. So that's also a daily tool, I would say.
Yeah. I think that all sounds like kind of a recipe for success. I also just, you know, acknowledging that this interview is going to be coming out in 2022. We're nearing, you know, the end of the year. Is there a project or a milestone that you'd like us to think about as, you know, as we consider the Guesthouse for our kind of 2022 activities?
Well, I'm going to be wrapping up my show with Matthew Day Jackson at the end of January, which is exciting. And then my next show is going to be with a woman named Martha Tuttle, who actually I discovered via Instagram. Somebody else had posted her work. I really liked it. I did some research, and then I got to meet her when I was in New York this fall. So I'm excited about that. And then my husband is working on sort of our next music concert performance. So we've got some interesting names lined up, and nothing's in contract, but I'm excited about that. But generally speaking, every day is just a stepping stone to kind of move forward. And you know, those are sort of the big things on the horizon, but
that's exciting. Well, we'll definitely, from an Art Frankly standpoint, we'll definitely stay tuned, and we'll be happy to support any forthcoming milestones. And then personally, I'm looking forward to my next visit to Jackson. So
me too. Me too.
We'll have to stay in touch. Well, we're excited for the year to come, and I just appreciate that you took the time today to tell us a little bit more about both your career in the arts and also the exciting programming that you guys are undertaking now.
Thank you, Ellie. I appreciate you having me.